Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's festival event. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Silvia Leung. I'm a literary editor and writer, and today I am also Asian Canadian Writer Workshops representative and the moderator. So first of all, I want to recognize that we've all logged onto this webinar from different territories. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that I am speaking to you from my home in Vancouver, on the unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I acknowledge all the nations who have cared for the land, recorded and unrecorded, and I'm grateful to have a home here. The Asian Canadian Writers Workshop, ACWW, was created out of a need to develop and nurture Pacific Rim Asian writers. Its primary purpose is to foster a community of writers and build literature. ACWW established a number of successes: writing workshops, literary anthologies, book clubs, mentorship of new writers, one-on-one manuscript development sessions, an annual reading series, chapters in Edmonton and Toronto, as well as the creation of the ACWW Emerging Writers Award, which has been renamed the Jim Wong Chu Emerging Writers Award. ACWW began in the late 60s, early 70s, with a handful of community activists turned writers such as Jim Wong Chu, Paul Yee, Rick Shiomi, Sky Lee, and Terry Watada. These pioneers saw the need to form an organization to promote its history and literary culture. The idea of ACWW was born. By the turn of the new millennium, ACWW became a major influence on the Asian Canadian literary world and worked hard to uncover emerging writing talent and assist them in finding publishers. The ACWW publishes Rice Paper Magazine, which began in 1995. In early 1996, Canada Council offered an initial project grant to turn it into a magazine format. Since 2016, the magazine has turned digital and became a webzine and has expanded to publishing anthologies. In 2013, ACWW created an Asian Canadian Writers Festival called LiterASIAN. It has become a very successful festival that has continued to grow in the past 8 years, featuring some of the best writers and emerging writers. It remains the only Asian Canadian Writers Festival in North America. In doing so, we create an important and unique networking opportunity between professional and emerging writers, students, and members of the broader public to learn and discuss topics of importance to Asian Canadian writing. This is the second time that we're holding our festival virtually and to a worldwide audience. A big shout out to everyone from across the world who are watching us from the comfort of their own homes and offices. Thank you for sharing your time with us from whatever time zone that you're in. And thank you to our partners and sponsors, BC Arts Council, Canada Council for the Arts, World Vancouver Festival, Pacific Canada Heritage Centre, Iron Dog Books, Chinatown Youth Collaborative, BC Artscape, the historic Joy Kogawa House, Dark Helix Press. And I also want to thank you, our wonderful team of ACWW volunteers, and Sophie Monk, our festival coordinator. Thank you to all of the publishers who provided the author's books. Each book is for sale online, and if you're in Vancouver, go to Iron Dog Books to support local businesses. I'd like to introduce our panel for today. We have Jackie Lau, Diana Morita Cole, Diana Ng, JF Garrard, and Cynda Yeasting. So let me first introduce our first reader for today, Jackie Lau. Jackie decided that she wanted to be a writer when she was in grade 2, sometime between writing The Heart That Got Lost and The Land of Shapes. She later studied engineering and worked as a geophysicist before turning to writing romance novels. Jackie lives in Toronto with her husband, and despite living in Canada her whole life, she hates winter. When she's not writing, she enjoys gelato, gourmet donuts, cooking, hiking, and reading on the balcony when it's raining. So go ahead, Jackie.
All right, so I'm going to be reading from my book called Man vs. Durian, and this is the first chapter. It's 2 in the morning, and I'm waiting for my mother to come home. This is not the way things are supposed to be. I'm 26 years old. I'm the one who should be out late having fun, but I spent the evening watching Netflix in my pajamas. After a few years of living away from my parents, it's been an adjustment to move back in with them and my younger sister. But after everything that happened last year, it was the best option, unfortunately. And then, 2 months ago, my mother retired. Ever since, she's been determined to have the time of her life. Late nights playing mahjong are a regular occurrence. I mean, they were before too, but not to the same extent. She's always been home by freaking 2 o'clock in the morning. I make myself another cup of tea and waste some more time on my phone. It's 2:30 now, and my mother still isn't home. 2:30 on a Monday, that is. Monday's my day off, and now that mom's not working, days of the week don't matter to her. How did it come to this? My 6-year-old mother has a more exciting social life than I do. I feel pathetic. A common theme in my life these days. I send my mother another text. I've been sending her text once an hour since midnight. I don't think anything bad has happened to her, but this is rather disconcerting. Finally, at 3:15, I hear the key in the lock and breathe out a sigh of relief. My mom comes in, slips off her shoes, puts on her slippers, and tiptoes into the kitchen. "Why are you still up?" she asks. "You know I can't sleep until you get home." My father and sister are sound asleep, but for some reason, I'm unable to rest if the rest of the household is out. It's annoying. I feel like I'm the mother. "What's that in your hand?" My mother, who had been so careful to tiptoe through the house, slams a piece of paper down on the table. "I got a parking ticket." "What did you do, Mom? Park in front of a fire hydrant again? I told you." "Don't be silly. Of course I didn't do that. I learned my lesson the first time. Besides, I wasn't parked in front of that fire hydrant, just too close to it." "Same difference," I mutter. She waves the ticket in the air. "Apparently you cannot park on the streets in Markham after 2:30 in the morning. What a silly rule. Maybe you should consider not staying out until 3:15 in the morning and have some mercy on your daughter who always waits up for you." "That's your problem, not mine. Plus I stayed up until 3 waiting for you to come home when you were in high school. This is payback." I sigh. That only happened once, on prom night. I was very good at being home by 11 when I was in high school and university. I went to the University of Toronto, so I was able to save money by doing my degree while living at home. I moved out as soon as I was finished, though. Stephen and I got an apartment in the West End, far from my parents' house in Scarborough. I pushed Stephen out of my mind. That asshole isn't worth my brain power. I still can't believe I gave him so many years of my life. "You are not as good as you seem to think," Mom says. I roll my eyes. I was a very good daughter. "What about now? You work at an ice cream shop. You're wasting your degree." Not this again. "I have a degree in computer science, and I used to work as a software developer. I was a damn good one, too. And then a whole bunch of shit happened. Shit that can be summed up quite succinctly. Men are assholes." "I told Minnie we could set you up with her nephew," Mom says. "Remember Kent?" "Yes," I say with a sigh. "I've met him a couple times. He is studying to be an optometrist. I think he would be good for you. Encourage you to pursue your career in software development again." I don't want to be set up with Kent. First of all, I am completely off men at the moment and have no interest in dating. Second of all, I don't think Kent is attractive. Third of all, he has bad breath. Fourth of all, he's an entitled brat. Fifthly, going out with Aunt Minty's son or nephew sounds like an absolute nightmare. She and Mom would interfere nonstop. And I can't return to software development as easily as Mom thinks. She sniffs. "Well, lucky for you, Minnie refused to set you up. She's concerned you would distract him from his studies, plus she doesn't think you're good enough for him." Although I have no interest in Kent, that hurts. You know what? It's goddamn 3:30 in the morning and I stayed up late to wait for my mother. I'm feeling tired and cranky and pathetic. I already have a boyfriend. The words pop out of my mouth before I can think about what I'm doing. That's right, I just invented a boyfriend. "You have a boyfriend and you didn't tell me?" Mom screeches, probably loud enough to wake everyone up. "We haven't been together long. That's why I didn't say anything before." "What's his name? Where did you meet him? What does he do?" "His name's Peter." Why is that the first name that comes to mind? Probably because I watched To All the Boys I Loved Before. "We met at Ginger Scoops. He's a doctor." Of course he's a doctor. He's my fake boyfriend, so I might as well go all out and say the thing that will make Mom happiest. "Well, he's doing his residency right now, in pediatrics." Yep, I'm dating a pediatric resident who nobly goes around saving children and puppies and God knows what else. I continue. I don't see him very often because, he's doing his residency. He works all the time. That's why you haven't noticed me going out more than usual. Is he Chinese? Mom asks hopefully. She would be okay with me dating a guy of any background, but she does have a slight preference. Yes, I say. She grins. Wait until I tell Minnie. You see, I say, if Peter is interested in me, then I'm good enough for Kent Lowe. But it's too late. I'm taken. When can I meet him, Mom asks. Not anytime soon. Like I said, he's pretty busy. And with that, I head upstairs. When I wake up at 9 the next morning, my head is hurting and I'm full of regret, even though I didn't drink a drop of alcohol last night. But I didn't get enough sleep, and my late-night impulse to make up a boyfriend immediately rushes back to me. I trudge downstairs and pour myself some coffee. My mother is talking animatedly in Cantonese to someone on the phone, boasting about how her daughter is dating a doctor. Dear God, what have I started?
Thank you, Jackie. That was very entertaining. Next, we have Diana Morita Cole. Diana is a memoirist, journalist, storyteller, and winner of the 2017 Carver Award for Emerging Writers, sponsored by the Nelson and District Arts Council and the Kootenai Literary Society for her book, Sideways, Memoir of a Misfit. Her writing has been published on Sheer Post, in the New Orphic Review, shortlisted in the open season competition of the Malahide Review, nominated for the Pushcart Prize, and included on the reading list of 3 institutions of higher learning in Canada and in the United States. The Columbia Basin Trust awarded her with a grant to self-publish her memoir. Founder of the Nelson Asian Heritage Event, Diana tells stories about her birth in the Minidoka War Relocation Center and the persecution of Japanese Canadians and Japanese Latin Americans during World War II. Please go ahead, Diana.
Thank you, Sylvia. I'd like to thank Ellen Cho for inviting me here today. And I've chosen a small segment from my first chapter of Sideways, Memoir of a Misfit. The chapter is called Mama's Belly. And I thought I would give you a short introduction to my background. So I'm going to have to screen share. Okay, so this is a portrait of my mother in Okayama, Japan, just as she had married my father by proxy. He was living in Turtle Island in a place called Hood River Valley, and he'd waited for her arrival for 8 years. And so she came to Turtle Island via Seattle. And you can see from this photograph that she came from a very comfortable lifestyle where they had electricity, and she didn't know how to cook because there was a cook in the home, and she didn't know how to iron, and she didn't know how to sew. And my father met her in Seattle and took her to a log cabin lit with kerosene lamps and a dirt floor. In Hood River Valley, she had 8 children. They're all older than I am. And my family was incarcerated in 3 different prison camps. And it was the last one, Minidoka, where I was born. And you can see the difference, the transformation actually in my mother. Her hands are big and rough. She lived as a farmer's wife for 25 years. And there I was, a bit of an afterthought when she was 44. We were released from camp and taken to, relocated to Chicago. And this is me growing up as a ghetto kid in the streets of Chicago. And I would be about 2 or 3 years old. And this would be around the time that my mother and I would take baths together. And so this is the story. Despite the strict accommodations I made during the day to white society, Part of my consciousness remained with my parents. Each night before bed, Mama and I would leave our apartment and enter the bathroom we shared with the tenant across the hall. Behind the white door, shiny and lumpy from many applications of thick oil paint, I would watch her scrub the bathtub with her deeply veined hands and turn the taps to fill the large white iron tub for our nightly soak. The water ran, releasing my confusions. I would get into the tub first and watch Mama step over me. From my vantage point, I could see every aspect of her physical being from her feet all the way up to her hairy, dark pudendum. As she immersed herself, I was transfixed by the translucent quality of her unblemished skin and the roundness of her breasts and stomach. And though she was well past her prime, to me, she was beautiful, sensual, and extraordinary. But I couldn't tell her because I was too engrossed in the ritual. Mama's stomach was never totally submersed by the water that rose over my bony chest. Her stomach stood out like a mountain, a living monument to the 9 of us that had started life deep within its mystery. I would try to push it down with my small hand, but it shot back up, refusing to obey. The utter antithesis of who she was. Her stomach was like an iceberg. What I saw above the waterline wasn't half of what lay beneath the steaming liquid of the bath. Sometimes it seemed a more robust replica of Japan, the island nation where she was born. And because Mama seldom spoke, and never during our baths, her body appeared to have a life independent of who she was. She was mythic, and to me, she represented a landscape of bliss. She would place a hot washcloth across her chest, and when I was older, she'd place one across mine. Much like Mama's flesh, the heat of the washcloth gave silent comfort. After resting a few minutes, she would sweep the wash rag slowly across her flesh, beginning at her small forehead, then down over her gracefully arched nose, temporarily covering the mole under her left eye. She would wipe her neck, and then down across her breasts, the cloth swept over the great round mountain like a squall and disappeared in the valley between her legs. The water was always hot, so hot that it was painful to step into at first. And Mama kept the water steamy, dutifully opening the hot water faucet again and again as we relaxed. And the pipes would knock in protest each time she opened the valve, disturbing the silence of our sanctuary. Mama was a quiet woman, and if I had asked her my most pressing question, by which path we had left her body, I would have broken the mood, disturbing her rare moments of tranquility. Mama's oheso, her navel, wasn't big enough, I reasoned, so how did the doctor reach in and get us out? He must have carved a circle around her navel, my eyes following the water's edge that encircled her protruding belly. With a burst of insight, I lifted her skin as utility workers raised manhole covers to climb below the streets of Chicago. Such was my childish solution. I, both isolated and stranded by language and by culture from her, and yet engulfed by her affection. So that's my way of saying Happy Mother's Day. And to tell you that my book, Sideways Memoir of a Misfit, is available at the Japanese Canadian Cultural Center in Toronto and at the Nikkei Museum, and also from my website. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. That was beautiful. And what a privilege to see your nice photos from the past.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next, we have Diana Ng. So Diana Ng is widely known as the Labyrinth Lady for building Metro Vancouver's first public park labyrinth with the city of Surrey in British Columbia, Canada. She transforms words into music with her narrative of how she came to be involved with labyrinths. In an inspiring, powerful, and thought-provoking way, she shares other people's personal stories of the amazing effects they experience walking in labyrinth. Meander through the labyrinth with Diana to experience its profound calming and therapeutic benefits. Diana Ng, an award-winning speaker and leadership consultant, encourages openness, equality, and collaborative leadership in organizations. Go ahead, Diana.
Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you, Alan Chu, for the invite to this festival. I'm delighted to be here with all the fellow author panelists, and thank you to the audience for spending the hour with us. For my 5-minute reading, I chose this piece. We mourn when there is loss. A few examples of loss include opportunity, employment, identity, or health and well-being. However, with passing away of someone you love profoundly, grief lasts forever. Over time, we learn to manage sorrow, live with it like a change in seasons, learn to move forward. The sadness first appears every day, constantly preoccupying the mind, body, and spirit. As time passes, it appears less. It becomes less overwhelming and unmanageable. The aching sadness and anger that formed a solid mass in my mid-abdomen did not subside. Like a petulant child, grief screamed for attention. Pushing her further away hindered my thoughts and focus, drained my energy, interfered with my ability to be productive. Grief had arrived 2 days earlier, lingering and nudging for conversation. A sudden onslaught of work and fatigue made her an unwanted visitor. However, she remained, played hide and seek, disappeared and reappeared periodically throughout the day. Drawing air into the depths of my lungs, briefly quiet and tame grief. However, it did not heal the reawakening of the acute injury that resulted from the severance of a profound love relationship. It began one morning when I woke up to see my mother in the mirror. I saw her eyes, nose, and mouth looking back at me. Like a tsunami, anguish and affection flooded my body and soul as her big, warm smile with small, petite, straight white teeth looked at me. I wonder why she died. The physician who attended to her offered an overwhelming, detailed, technical explanation. However, the reasons were not satisfying. Could they have done more? Did they give up too soon? Had they tried everything in their power, experience, and knowledge? The thought of them seeing her as an insignificant immigrant woman with little value hastened their giving up, increased my mistrust. They discouraged an autopsy, and I never questioned them, as I felt my mother had suffered enough. Further, I wanted to minimize their insensitive and callous touching of her body. I wanted my mother to have peace. It had been a lengthy process of doctor's visits, lab tests, and medication prescriptions leading to her sudden death. I knew she was wary. That was more than 24 years ago. I've never forgotten my mother. I see her everywhere. My mother's image appears in all she loved. Blood red roses in Stanley Park, faux peony blossoms in our garden, ripe yellow-orange papayas and apricots in summer, and blackish red plums on hot days. Her love shines in more than 100 dresses she sewed for my children. Each dress uniquely adorned with an assortment of colorful buttons, ribbons, and applique of balloons and flowers. Grief visited me on the coldest day in January, under dull skies, with freezing wind. I slowly entered the labyrinth, seeking solace. I walked, shouldering the weight of sad emptiness. Left, right, left, right, left, heel to the ball of foot, right, heel to the ball of foot, repeating slowly. The cold air felt crunchy in my nostrils, like the frozen frost on the ground. In the center of the sacred path, I felt gratitude. My mother's legacy is about enduring love. I'm thankful that she fed me, dressed me, and loved me. As if I could do no wrong. The wisdom in my body cannot be found in books. The intelligence came from my mother, the petite, thin woman with the largest smile. I follow in her footsteps. I too fed my children, dressed, and loved them, as if they could do no wrong. Others have told me that I already know that my daughters will feed their children, dress, and love them, as if they could do no wrong. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you, Diana. That's very timely and beautiful. Next, we have J.F. Garrard. J.F. Garrard is the founder of Dark Helix Press, host of the Artsy Raven podcast about writing and publishing, co-president of the Toronto branch of the Canadian Authors Association, deputy editor for Rice Paper Magazine, and assistant editor for Amazing Stories magazine. She is an editor and writer of speculative fiction. Her latest published short stories include the award-winning The Blue Sun, the Shanino Short Story Contest Winners Anthology, and The Curse in the Brave New Girls, Adventures for Gals and Gizmos Anthology. See her website at jfgarrard.com. Go ahead, JF.
Well, thank you, Silvia, for your introduction. I'm going to read a short story called My Girl, which was published in Siren's Call Publications Ezine, and it was in issue 37, which was a Woman in Horror Month issue. And you might notice my Zoom background is very colorful. It's actually paper talismans, and this is mentioned in the story as magical objects, and it's used by the main character who wants to save her unborn child. And the story starts off in Chinatown in a witch's house. My Girl by J.F. Garrard. The chip in one of my manicured nails made me frown. Looking at my hands distracted me from the awful stench of blood, waiting for the witch to finish her work. Nausea had overwhelmed me when the little old lady slit the throat of a rooster with no warning, spraying some blood onto my expensive designer dress when she collected the red liquid into a white bowl to use as ink to draw on a yellow piece of paper. I felt too petrified to inquire about what was going on. It was amazing how a 200-square-foot room could be crammed with so much stuff. There were roosters held in multiple cages, squawking angrily in my direction, a desk filled with incense, swords made from ancient coins, long strips of yellow paper, calligraphy brushes, and other random crap. A shrine in the corner contained porcelain Chinese gods, honored with burning incense which filled the room with smoke. My eyes shut for a moment from exhaustion as I sat on a tiny stool. The last few days had not been easy. I had gone for my 5-month ultrasound appointment by myself, since my husband was out of town, and the doctor told me that the baby's heart had stopped beating. I had a corpse in my body and I freaked out. I called my mother in China, who told me not to tell my husband. They didn't trust him because he was a guailo, a white foreign devil. My parents were forever worried that he would divorce me, and a miscarriage would definitely make him leave me. Instead, my mother spent a day calling relatives all over North America. She made me book a flight to Vancouver, which was closer than flying back to China. Now here I am, sitting in a random witch's house, waiting for her to finish a spell. Take this and put it on your friend's belly. Take this other one and put it on your belly for a night and day, the old woman rasped in a dialect of Chinese, which I understood, but had to think about for a few minutes due to her accent. Can you say that again? I took the 2 pieces of yellow paper gingerly by their corners, which had red Chinese calligraphy scribbled on it and some other symbols I didn't recognize. The old woman looked at me as if I was an imbecile. That paper on your friend's belly, that paper on your belly. I held out one of the pieces of paper. This paper on my belly? No, the old woman sighed. You can't read Chinese, can you? Oh no, a hot blush spread across my cheeks. I was sent to Toronto when I was very young, so I can only speak Chinese but can't write. Okay, I will mark the corner of this piece of paper. This one with the mark you put on your belly, and the other one you put on your friend's belly. How do I put it on? Use tape. Just tell her it's for good luck. She let out a soft cackle. Tell her it must not come off for at least a day and night, or else you will have to pay a price. Pay a price? I need to give you more money? No, no. She shook her head as she used a dirty rag to wipe off the dust before she took a drink from the bowl filled with blood. Her lips dripped with red liquid as she gave me her final words. Good luck and don't screw up. The baby shower had been planned months before I got pregnant. I thought it would be fun. I would be a great hostess and impress people in my giant 10,000 square foot home while serving fancy snacks from fancy catering companies. Instead, the baby shower for Lana, my best friend, felt like the longest day in my life as I watched women giggle and fawn over her 8-month-old belly. When people approached me to comment on mine, I just smiled and put my hand protectively over my stomach. Nervously, I waited until Lana needed a break from the festivities. I dragged her into the upstairs washroom and told her I had a surprise for her. Oh my gosh, Laura, this is a huge bathroom. She stared at the marble floor, sauna tub, and gold-handled faucets enviously. This might seem a bit weird, but in the Asian culture, we have charms to help bring luck to our children. I got one for your baby and mine. I pulled out the yellow piece of paper from a gold box on the counter. Oh, that's so nice of you, she gushed. Is that Chinese writing? I thought you didn't know Chinese. I flew to Vancouver and got a priestess to make them specially for us. I gave a tight grin. She said, we have to wear this on our belly for 24 hours, and that special luck will fall onto our children. Well, I do need some luck, she lamented. Will might get laid off soon, and just getting unemployment on mat leave isn't going to pay for much. Don't worry, I'll ask Ryan to see if his company has any extra positions to fit your husband into. I opened the medicine cabinet to grab some surgical tape. Let's put lots of tape on this so the paper doesn't fall off. We helped each other attach the yellow pieces of paper onto our belly and then lowered our clothes on top of it. This feels so funny, Lana giggled, but thank you. If Brian does have any positions, please let me know. Of course, I hugged her. Why don't you go back downstairs? I'm feeling a bit nauseous. I stare at myself in the mirror, a well-dressed Asian woman with deep bags under her eyes. Pulling up some foundation and blush, I put makeup on my face to hide my sleepless night. A few minutes later, I felt it, a great rush of warmth where the yellow piece of paper was. The transfer of chi energy from her baby to mine was starting. My eyes closed for a moment. In my head, I told myself I was doing the right thing. It would be hard for her to raise a third child in her household, and I had more than enough money to raise a dozen if I wanted to. She was younger, and if she lost this one, she could get pregnant again, while for me at 40, getting pregnant again was near impossible. So I'm going to stop here. I actually have the whole reading on YouTube, so you can download or go to YouTube and look up my name, JF Garrard, and you can listen to the rest of the story for free. So there you go.
Thanks.
Thank
and
you.
I love your background, and it was very relatable, very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and last but not least, we have Cynda Yeasting. So Cynda was born in Vancouver, BC, to a pioneer Chinese family. She's the eldest of a family of 5. She's a second-generation Vancouverite. And although she is adventurous and has been fortunate enough to travel to some wonderful places in the world, Vancouver is where her heart is most content. She has strived to live a life without regrets and to always remain true to herself. Loving and being loved by Michael is one of the greatest joys in her life. Go ahead, Cynda.
Thank you, Silvia, for that. And also to the ACWW and Alan Cho. I found out about the ACWW shortly after my book was published, and it's been a wonderful home for me ever since, as I stay involved with everyone there. And somewhere Jim Wong Chu is looking over me, and I appreciate it. Thank you. So here's the cover of my book. And just a little backstory. I was a divorced single mom of 2 boys and decided that I'm going to find love. And so I went to a dating website, and it was there I met Michael Chu, a single dad, divorced, and living with stage 4 terminal cancer. So here's my reading. Plenty of Fish website. Michael wrote, I'm new to this site and would love to find the woman I've been looking for all my life, my best friend and lover. I'm a second-generation Canadian with lots of British Columbia family history. You are a non-smoker, honest, sincere, warm, and caring with very insignificant issues. I spend my time cherishing every minute of my life, appreciating its challenges, and try to live it to the max, as we only have one crack at it. Cynda wrote, my life is happy, but I'm at the point where I'm wanting to find someone special to share it with. I know who I am and what I want. I'm emotionally and financially stable. I'm looking for a like-minded person, someone who wants to make a difference in life, someone who wants to be healthy and fit or is striving to be. We all had to start somewhere. I don't play head games. Life is too short for that. I want someone who is honest, has integrity, is sincere, and most of all, down to earth. From Michael Love Cynda, life that is a constantly changing process. Some days I wake up feeling pretty good, and others, the thought hits me as soon as I wake up. My Michael's gone. He's dead. And there's nothing I can do to change the situation. I can't bring him back. There's no rewind on life. I feel the overwhelming urge to throw up, give up, and just lie there in a heap of tears. I know I can't, as they say, life does go on, and mine has continued to do so in this past year. I've had to make myself go on. Losing. What a silly expression, as I didn't misplace him, but he's no longer physically here on this earth with me. It's been the hardest thing I've ever dealt with in my life, yet it has also been the most life-changing experience ever. To this day, I would never trade my time with Michael for a safe, comfortable life. At times, he told me how I saved his life, but in reality, he saved mine. Something was always missing before I met him, and he filled that void. The intensity of the pain of living without him continues to lessen over time, and the joy of being so very loved replaces that space more and more as time goes on. You won't get flowery prose from me. Life is tough, and this whole experience has rocked my world, good and bad. Some days it's hell, but other days I laugh a little harder, smile a bit brighter, and I know that I'm going to be okay. They say that grieving has its peaks and valleys. Special dates and holidays trigger memories, as do rituals, songs, places, and anything in life that you shared together. I'm the crazy Asian lady walking around the grocery store, trying not to burst into tears as I pick up a green onion, because I remember how Michael wouldn't buy green onions unless he could get the same discount for buying one that you would get when you bought 2. After finding, loving, and being loved by Michael, I really do now believe that my life was planned out from the beginning. Please let me share with you the story of the love of my life, Michael. Chapter 4, Test Results. February 13th, 2007. Today, Michael had to go to the BC Cancer Agency clinic for further testing. On his last visit, he had an infection, and so the x-rays were not conclusive. He called me that evening, or I called him, I think. I can't remember. I was panicked, and it had been much too long, and I hadn't heard from him. The news was not good. The cancer had become aggressive again. It had been stable since October. They would start him on chemotherapy, and they wouldn't wait very long before they started either. I remember tears flowing freely and rolling down my face as I talked to him. I never even thought about being scared. All I could think about was there would be more suffering for him. It was a very difficult night, and all I could think about was I would see him tomorrow, and it couldn't come soon enough. To this day, I can close my eyes and see me sitting on the floor in my basement as I tried to absorb the enormity of what was to come. This was real life, and it was incredibly scary. Thanks.
Thanks, Cynda. That was incredibly touching. Can't wait to hear more about it. So thanks everyone for tuning into that. So now we're going to move on to our panel discussion. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to send them in the Q&A chat, and then we can start asking your questions after the panel discussion. So feel free to start doing that right now. So first of all, everyone can contribute. You can talk anytime you have something to say. So our first question is, what is the difference between traditional and self-publishing? Why would someone choose self-publishing?
I think I can start off with maybe the basics. So traditional is when you get a deal with a book publisher, and obviously self-publishing, you're the one doing the work. But you think of the book, let's say it's like a house. So you would give the house to the traditional publisher, and they would hire contractors to fix it up, etc., and they would sell it and they reap the profit. But in self-publishing, you would be the one calling all the contractors to fix up this house, but at the same time, you reap more of the profits. So you have a lot more control. But of course, there's pros and cons, which we'll touch on later. But in traditional publishing, you're generally signing a contract, and you're giving your manuscript over to someone else to work with. And self-publishing, you retain your own rights. Does anyone want to add to this?
I went the self-publishing route mostly because I didn't want anyone to change what I wanted to say. I did have an editorial review done by Friesen Press, who published my book, and they provided a lot of valuable insight, and some things I took into consideration I changed. One thing they asked me to do was to change the context of the emails. I have a large amount of emails between myself and Michael throughout the book. And because he was on a great deal of medications, his brain was often fuzzy, and he didn't always articulate, wasn't always able to articulate what he meant. And so it was suggested that I correct all of the language. And I felt that would take away from the true flavor of what he was trying to convey. And so that was one reason I was very grateful that I had a say in how they're going to be presented, because to me, it's a huge part of the emotions in the story.
Yes. I chose self-publishing because I love the independence. I decide what material, to some degree, what material goes into my book, how I want to present it, and I don't need to satisfy someone else. That basically was my my motivation. And the piece about the traditional publisher, you pretty well have to wine and dine and network really heavily to find someone who believes in you, who thinks your writing is of good quality or worthwhile. At this stage of my life, I just think I don't need that. I can be my own expertise in my own life, and I believe I have something to share. So I chose self-publishing, and it has worked out well for me. Yes.
Yeah, I think we touched a bit on it. So what are some benefits or cons? How about what are some cons of self-publishing or other benefits you can think of about choosing the route of self-publishing?
Well, I think Diana touched on some of it, right, about the whining and dining, because publishing is, it's like a gambling game, right? 9 out of 10 books will make money. So when you approach a publisher and they look at your manuscript, in a sense, they sort of want what they had done previously that was successful. So if your book is a little bit different and it doesn't fit what they want, they're not going to take it. It's not like don't take it personally when they reject you. It's because they want to make money, and if they don't think your book's going to make money, they're not going to choose your book. But of course, with self-publishing, you're the one putting the message out there, so you can determine what you want to say, and you can hire a team to help you say it. I mean, one of the best self-published books I read was Jan Wong. I think it was called Out of the Blue, about her depression. And when you look at the book, you don't even know it's self-published. I mean, at one point it was picked up by a traditional publisher, but then there was a lawsuit, blah, blah, blah. So anyhow, so she self-published it. She hired her own PR team. She hired her own cover designer. So you can do it. But one of the cons, of course, is if you self-publish, you won't have as many networks you can tap into, right, to get those Kirkus reviews and to get all these, marketing things out there, because you're going to be paying for everything. And after a while, it adds up, right? So, Jackie, do you want to tell us a little bit about your romance books? Because I know you do a lot of marketing.
Yeah. So a bit about just my publishing path. So this is actually my second pen name. And under my first pen name, I had, I guess, 12. Mostly they're short, not full-length novel romances with 4 different small presses that were mainly ebook first. So they didn't put out, I think with one of them I actually had print versions, but basically they were focused on selling ebooks. And so the benefit of that is they're the one who uploads your book to the website and deals with Amazon, which is a pain to deal with sometimes. They're the one who hires the editor for you. They give you the cover. And so I had a bunch of books with these small presses, and none of them really made any money. I made about $100 a year. And I just had some bad experiences, especially with the last one, where they're like, 8 months after they signed the contract, they're like, well, we don't want to publish this book anymore. And after all the stress of dealing with that particular publisher, I was just kind of like, you know what, I could do better on my own. And it'll be less stressful. So then I started a new pen name. I had a very clear idea of what kind of romances I wanted to write. And so under this name, I published, I think, 16 novellas and short novels, all romances. And so one of the benefits is I can put out, so this has all been in the past 3 years or so, is I can put out exactly what books I write, the books I want to write. I can put them out on the dates I want to put them out. I can just have final say on the covers, which is also a problem because you're the one organizing everything. So that's one of the cons of self-publishing, is there's so much extra that you have to think about, including getting, accounts set up on all the different platforms, Amazon, Kobo, that sort of thing, arranging print books if you want print books. So there's a lot of extra things that you have to worry about. But then you also do get to decide exactly what you want to put out. You're kind of like the acquiring editor. And you can also decide to drop the price of your book and do promotions however you like. And in romance, a lot of successful indie authors, they publish frequently. And so a lot of benefits of putting the first book free and getting sell-through in the series and all that stuff is stuff that you can't really do if you're with a trade publisher. You don't have control over that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's very insightful, Jackie. Thanks for sharing. How about, does anyone have any fears from doing self-publishing or potential fears? And what about your reputation when you do get your book out? Does anyone want to speak into that?
Well, I think that one of the fears that I had was, of course, the amount of revelations that I put into my book. And I was very much concerned about how that would be accepted. And it's a very interesting process because I had never intended for my book to be published. And it was only because of my writing group and their encouragement that I even considered it. So I know that some writers who write memoir actually go to their source and get permission. Other people, like me, went to see lawyers. And I was told that in Canada, the onus is on the author to prove that you are not slandering anyone. But in the United States, the onus is on the accuser. So basically, the author is protected. And because my story took place in the United States, I felt that I was relatively safe in revealing some of the more unsavory aspects of my background. And I was very elated to hear Larissa Lai talk about revealing ourselves in our full humanity and messiness. And I thought, wow, I did that. So, but it doesn't, it comes with risks. It does. But I think that that's what makes your story interesting, because you're not hedging the truth. And I think that I would have been concerned if anyone tried to censor me. So that's also a risk you take in accepting a contract. I think the prestige of being published is wonderful and can't be denied. And the fact that they, any publisher would generally is willing to underwrite the production, right, of your manuscript. Whereas if you publish, you have to underwrite everything. And so you take all the hits. Now, I worked as a project manager, so I actually enjoyed self-publishing, and it's brought me incredible joy. But there are risks, and when you hire people, they don't always come through, right? So you've got to deal with those risks as well. And if you like the hurly-burly, chaotic world of managing projects, then maybe this is an avenue that you would like to pursue.
I would like to add, for me, I really enjoy the writing process, and my book came almost the entire thing was intuitive. Like I didn't really was so well planned that I was seeking out the like the steps or the chapter titles and all of that. I wrote it as I went along and edited as I went along. I think the most difficult piece in self-publishing is the vulnerability piece. You have my writing is nonfiction, so it's true, and having to review some parts of you that is not, say, so strong. The vulnerable piece was difficult, I would say, and yet be truthful. As some of the other speakers have already said, it is about our full humanity. And I think we want to be honest and speak for truth in our writing.
Yeah, when I first initially thought about self-publishing, there were a few people that told me not to do it because they said if you do it, then you'll never be a debut author, considered a debut author by the traditional houses. And I'm just like, I'm going to die before anyone publishes my stuff. So you know what? I'm just going to go ahead, because I had written a manuscript. It was an East meets West vampire book. And every traditional publisher I approached were like, vampires are European. What are you talking about? There's Asian vampires. And they just could not get their head around it. They're like, we can't market this book. It's unmarketable. So I'm like, well, screw you guys. So I did a Kickstarter. I raised some money. And I remember my parents were so embarrassed. They're like, why are you going out begging for money? I was like, Kickstarter's a marketing thing, people, I'm pre-selling the book. And, and in the end, they did give me some money, which was really nice. But, they thought it was really embarrassing I was doing this and asking, letting people know this is going to be self-published and then opening a company. I didn't think I'd get this far, to be honest. I was just thinking about one book at the time. I never thought about opening a press and publishing other people. It's a lot of work. I'm not sure if I'll do it again. But anyhow, that's how it ended up. You just start on your journey and then you see where it goes. Everyone's journey is different. And the traditional houses are still the gatekeepers. And I think in Canada, it's still sort of like the golden standard, right? A lot of people view that. But at the same time, I think self-publishing has also improved. At the same time, though, you're competing with a lot of people. It's a double-edged sword. Like 1 million books get self-published in the US alone. So, you can publish your one book, but then how are you going to compete against all these other people. So you have to really think about what you want to say, how you're going to market it, because some of them are, very aggressive in their marketing. How do you compete, right? And let people know about your book. So that's something you have to think about as a self-publisher versus the traditionally published, because you don't worry about that stuff, supposedly. You just let the marketing people do it, right?
So I was going to say, one of the, I think ebooks have really revolutionized self-publishing because you don't actually need a print version. And in genre fiction, like I write romance, ebooks are huge, and 95% of my sales are electronic books, which is much easier for someone like me to put out than having to arrange printing. So I didn't even have print books for the first year. And because although you do have to pay upfront costs that you wouldn't have otherwise, like your editor, you get like 70% of your royalties instead of like 10 or 20%. So a lot of people do it as a good business decision for them, and they may well make more money than they would if they went with a publisher. So there's a sort of idea that people self-publish because their writing just isn't good enough for a publisher. And often it's, first of all, there are reasons you may not even want to try a publisher to start with, but also something that's really niche that may just not have a wide enough appeal for a big publisher can do really well in self-publishing. There's basically an audience for anything, right? And 1,000 people might not be a lot of readers to a big publisher, but it can be a huge difference if you're a self-published author. And although you may lose your debut status, like I sold a book to Penguin Random House largely, well, not maybe largely, but partly on the strength of my self-publishing career. So that actually helped me get that book deal. Not my sales numbers, because they're not quite big enough for them to care, but just the reputation I had and the reviews and stuff like that. So I'm still like a debut author for Berkeley, but I'm not actually a debut author. And I guess when I first started self-publishing, I wasn't really worried about that. I'd already been published with small presses. Honestly, my biggest fear when I started self-publishing was losing money. So I was very happy that I broke even on my first year. I didn't really make money, but I broke even.
Congratulations.
Yes. I am super grateful. There are festivals like LiterASIAN. We really need multiple voices in the publishing world, in the writer world, particularly in North America. Otherwise, we're in the danger of hearing only one narrative, and it's very important we have multiple narratives. We live in a diverse world, and there is no one kind of humanity. We're all there are multiple voices. We're all different. So I think it's very, very important that we get our messages out. And I am grateful to have discovered LiterASIAN festivals like this that encourages authors to keep going and keep writing and share the message.
For instance, Richard Wright, who's a very famous Black author in the United States, one of his books was censored by the white publishing houses during his lifetime. And it was only 80 years after his death that the book, The Man Who Lived Underground, has come out. So if you're willing to wait that long, I guess you can leave it to someone to discover you. But what might have happened had he decided to self-publish? Maybe the history of the world would have changed. So it's something to think about, whether you think your story is important enough to get out there. And also, as people have hinted at, publishing houses can go under. And I know a writer who published 3 books, and they're all out of print because the publishing house went under. So there's no sure path to success, and there's risks in both methods of publishing.
And the most famous self-published book is actually, I think it's Charles Dickens' The Christmas Carol.
Yes.
And he did it purely for money. So, you know, if he could do it, we could all do it, right?
And you have to go with what works for you.
Yes, yes. I certainly had to learn marketing. That was not my strength. I initially was trained to be a nurse. We took care of people. I went back to school. Then I learned leadership and diversity. I started training and teaching people multiple perspectives and an open attitude. However, I've never learned marketing, and that's a piece that I have to learn every single day pretty well. And I listen carefully to what the other authors are saying. You have to keep marketing is in itself it's a different kind of animal. And to make money, you really have to learn marketing skills, and I'm learning about it.
Well, it depends on what your goals are, right? Like as a writer, you're doing the creative stuff, and then you have to shut your brain off if you're going to self-publish, and then you have to put on your business brain and sort of think about how am I going to sell this, or, you know, I mean, part of the selling is I don't really do it for the money, but part of it is obviously the more books you sell, the more people will read it. Like I'm interested in readers more than the money. So, I mean, there are different ways of getting it into people's hands, but it's like, how do you find people to read your stuff, right? So that's marketing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one theme. Diana, go.
No,
ahead.
for myself, I think I have a good product. I think the whole world can walk labyrinths for peace. I think there's a lot of suffering in the world, and labyrinths is another tool, another way of finding peace and calm and being grounded. For me, getting that message out and trying to sell more of my books, I had to learn how. It's kind of a left brain activity, and writing is a right brain activity. You kind of have to switch different sides of your brain to make writing, publishing, and earning $1 possible.
There are also avenues to like grants that writers can research and find. For instance, I was very fortunate to receive a grant from the Columbia Basin Trust because I live in an area where the dams were built in the Columbia River. And so the Columbia Basin Trust wanted to find avenues to pay the community back for what they've done. And so I was lucky enough to receive a grant. I still am in the hole, but nonetheless, it did help me. I almost broke even, especially right at the beginning, by also getting a $500 award for the Richard Carver Award. So, I mean, there's different ways of accessing funds. We just have to be very resourceful and always be on the lookout, which is very time consuming. I appreciate that. And for someone who's very creative, maybe that's not the way they want to spend their time. Maybe they want to be writing. And I certainly can appreciate that choice as well.
It is hard to market because you're putting your heart out there and saying, like me, read my book. And it makes you very vulnerable. And like Diana, both Diana's, their stories are nonfiction, as is mine. And I decided if I was going to write, what is a real love story, a memoir, I wasn't going to candy coat anything. I was going to be honest, and there's going to be some stuff in there that's not so pretty, but I was also very mindful to make sure I didn't upset anybody. And it's a delicate balance when you're doing it yourself, and then you second guess yourself. And I did have some family members read it before it was published because I thought, am I going the right way? Is this okay? Is this too strong?
Like Diana.
So there's a theme here of being courageous, and I think every one of you ladies are so courageous to put your heart out there. I hope that inspires anyone who have a story that's in their unique life that they would want to share with the world too, and I hope they can glean some lessons here. And for the sake of these emerging writers or anyone who's just starting out, could any of you tell us what are the steps of self-publishing? I know we touched on it a bit in depth of some of them, but how about from beginning to end? What would you say are some general steps they can start going about their career or journey here?
Write the book. Write. Love the writing first.
And edit a lot. But then don't edit so much that you make yourself crazy.
Yeah,
Sometimes you have to step away.
Publishing is actually the shortest step in a way. Like writing, I think takes the longest, right?
Yeah.
And then finding the editor to make sure it's publishable. And then after that, it depends. Like if you're a graphic artist, you can do your own covers, or you could hire someone to do your cover. Print books. Print books are such a pain. If you don't want to format your books, you can find someone to help you format. Since we're in Canada, we're very lucky that we can just apply and get ISBN numbers. ISBN numbers you don't need it, but if you're going to publish multiple books, and when people look up ISBNs, they can find your other books. So in a way, it's a good trail to have, but you can get it for free from the government. And then find a distributor, like, you know, what Jackie mentioned, the Amazon, the Kobos, like all the different distributors you want to sign on with. I mean, there's a lot of different steps, but I think the most important step is like edit the manuscript first, and before you start thinking about publishing. And then publishing will just be so fast. You just press a button.
Just press a button.
Just press the button.
That's great. There's also some distribution houses. For instance, I access the resources of Library Bound through my husband's connections because he's a librarian. And so you really need to learn to exploit your network. And I have people distributing my book in the States, and I have, you know, and then I distribute in Canada, and I found all kinds of, you know, outlets here that distribute my hard copy. I've only dealt in hard copy. And I've sold approximately about 1,000 books. So I'm actually quite pleased with how it's gone, but you have to constantly be thinking, right? What's the next opportunity? What's the next, maybe that store will take my book. And so it sort of makes life more challenging, more interesting. And for someone at my age, it keeps me young, but I think I sort of become difficult to live with because I'm constantly thinking about where's the next opportunity.
Where's your baby?
Yeah, that's right. It's your baby. It's your legacy, especially.
And you've got you'll have to worry when you stop thinking. Okay, so it's a wonderful.
That's
thing.
Right. That's
You're
right.
Constantly
You want to
thinking of new avenues to explore.
Yes. And then of course you meet all these wonderful people like I've met on this panel.
Yeah.
And so the opportunities are, you know, enormous.
But that's
stories.
a big difference between traditional and self-publishing, is that you're always going to be pushing your book. But for traditional, because there are cycles, after a while, your book's like not the latest thing anymore. They're not going to market it, right? But as a self-publisher, you can keep marketing if you want. So, unless you have more babies, then you have to think about which baby.
So I've certainly learned to be very active and to be seen, be visible, and to be out in the community and meeting different people and telling people about your book. Basically, you are the marketing tool, and can't be shy. I've had to transform myself because of my book. If I want to sell it, if I want to market it, I have to do it. I have to go and talk to people, and meeting Alan Chu down at the previous year's LiterASIAN festival. I mean, I kind of cornered him in the corner and asked him, what's this festival all about? And basically, I didn't know how, but I became a speaker here. That's like another way. I call it networking.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Life is full of surprises.
And it's interesting. I mean, I'm delighted to be here, and I've met you guys. It's fun.
So Jackie, I'm more interested in telling us more about your covers and how you find those hot men.
So, so I don't do my covers myself. But I do find all the photos myself. So all the photos are from stock photo sites. So there are ones like Deposit Photos, Shutterstock, Adobe Stock. And basically, I just spend a lot of time searching on my stock photo sites for men. And then I tell my cover designer which photo to use, or maybe one of a couple photos, because I don't always know which is going to work best. And then she makes a cover with that. And we usually go through a few back and forth. She'll make it, and then sometimes she'll have to make big changes or little changes, and we'll go back and forth maybe 3 or 4 times to get something that I like. So
yeah, the durian was too big.
You have both print and ebooks, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So she makes she makes both the covers at the same time. It's the same covers, just she has to do the full wrap for the print version. That's all.
Is there any preference for ebooks or print books, or so should emerging writers, when they self-publish, should they choose one over the other, or does it not really matter? It just depends on your preference.
It really depends on what you're writing and what your goals are, basically. I'm not going to say my goal was to make lots of money, but I was definitely, part of my writing goal was to be a full-time author and make money from it that way. And I write romance, and romance readers are often very voracious. Like, they're the people who read like a book a day. And a lot of these readers have transitioned to e-readers. They're not reading print. I mean, some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. So like I said, like for an indie romance author, 95% of my sales are ebooks, and that is fairly typical. But of course, depending on what you're writing, you may want to have print books, especially like if you're writing for children and nonfiction, I think as well. You definitely want to have print books, whereas for me, I didn't have print books for a year, and that was okay. So, yeah.
Someone I know who self-published, she published her book as an ebook and as a hard copy, and she also hired a publicist. And what she did was there was a certain day that she said she would be selling her books for free on Amazon, her ebooks. And so everyone was downloading her book all over the world. So after that sale, she was able to claim that she was an international bestseller. And then she's catapulted her career into being taken up by a publishing house, just on that one book that she self-published. So evidently publishing houses don't look away if you've had a very successful career as a self-published author. So don't give up, keep fighting. It's possible. I've seen it happen.
In one way, they actually, so I think in general that publishing houses do less marketing than they used to. And even if you are published with a publisher, you're going to have to do, I mean, you're not the one trying to get your book into Target, but you still have to do a lot of marketing and promotion. And one of the things they like about self-published authors is that they're used to doing all that stuff themselves. And also they often, if you've self-published a bunch of books, you already have a built-in readership that will hopefully buy your new book with the publisher as well.
Thank you.
I was gonna say we have both print and ebooks because we go to conventions, and when you see someone in person, they want to see the print.
Yeah.
But most of my sales do come from ebooks generally. And I see in the chat box there's a question. If you go with the traditional way of publishing, will you be able to change your mind after the copies made by the publisher are all sold? Can you switch to publishing the book yourself? I think that depends on your contract. Like, how long do they have the rights for? I mean, if they have it for the next 20 years, maybe after 20 years is up, then you can take it back. But it really depends on the contract and what you signed, and also what type of rights you signed away as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, be very careful with the contract. You don't want to give away your copyright to the book. Just be very, very careful.
Well, I guess probably one of the
You want to own your book.
Things is The Handmaid's Tale, right? Like Margaret Atwood gave away all the rights, so she actually doesn't get any royalties from the TV show.
Oh, wow.
Hired as a producer, so she gets paid. But but for the actual manuscript, it's not hers; it's the publisher's.
Did she do that on purpose?
Well, at the time, when you're a desperate author, you'll sell it for $5. Come on.
So I don't think anyone has mentioned the use of beta readers. I use beta readers for my book. Beta readers are once I got my manuscript and I felt fairly confident that I am finished with my book. I'm done. I needed other people to read it, to give me feedback. We're so close to a writing, we're not able to see the holes or the errors or the messages that are not clear, the work, unclear sentences. So I got beta readers. My book was read by 5 different people before I called it quits and say, this is it, and published it. So that's an inexpensive way of having your book edited.
Jackie, do you
So
use
I found my beta readers.
Oh, sorry,
Hello?
Go ahead. Yeah, hello? Go ahead.
So I'm sharing, I found my beta readers on Facebook. I don't know how it's like now, but at the time, I self-published my book probably about the second year or the first year after Facebook came out. And people on it at that time, to me, they were real and true. And however, I hear things are different now. So I don't know how you get beta readers now. But at that time, I did it through Facebook. And I found 5 people. I screened them. I asked them, what is your profession? Basically, where do you work? Kind of, very low-end screening, I guess. And I trusted that they were telling the truth. And that's how I got my book edited.
Oh, I want to ask Jackie if she uses beta readers because she's written the most out of all of us.
I sometimes do.
Yeah.
So sometimes, usually what happens is I trade with another romance author. So I'm pretty involved in the romance community. So I know lots of other authors. And so usually we trade, or, maybe not at that time, but at a later time. So sometimes I have between 1 and 3 beta readers, and then I'll incorporate their changes and then send it to my editor. But more than half my books, I think, have just gone straight to my editor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess that's why you have an editor.
Yeah.
Writing groups are great because they keep you going because you have a deadline every month or whenever you meet, and they're usually open and willing to take the time to read your manuscript. So don't forget to belong to a writing group.
Mm-hmm.
So Diana, do you just message people randomly and say, can you be my beta reader? Do you put an advertisement of looking for beta readers, or how do you approach people on Facebook?
Well, like I said, it's quite a few years ago. At the time, there was a group called Beta Readers. So I went there. And because I was in the Labyrinth community, and after making several or many Facebook posts, I kind of know who keeps showing up, and I would direct message them. Go, I've written a book. It's about labyrinths. Are you interested in it? Would you be interested in reading my manuscript for me and giving me some feedback? That's how I would start communication. And then I usually ask, do you mind telling me what profession you're in? Because I know one of my beta readers, she's a counselor from Whistler, and I was delighted that she read my stuff because there's something there's some pieces of my writing are fairly emotional, and she would pick up things like, you're making reference to women. I think men experience this too, and then I have to change my language to be more inclusive, to include men. So it was interesting. I would probably do the same thing again. I am planning to write a second book, I'm not done.
Wow.
And I would use the same method again. Yes, because I have a message, and I really believe we need multiple voices. We can't let our world to have only one narrative. You have to have multiple narratives. People share it. We're all very different, and we have different values and different beliefs. We have the right to exist. I believe in it.
Here.
Yeah, I think I also, with a grain of caution with some beta readers, like I've been getting a lot of emails from people offering to review my work, but then when I start looking into it, some of them are not real. So lately there's been a lot of fake emails from people. So what they do is they take your manuscript and they sell it themselves. So they self-publish it before you can. So you just have to really vouch, really look into the person, and because it's a trust. It's a matter of trust too. I mean, if you're giving someone your raw manuscript, you don't want them to just take it too, right? So just be careful looking for beta readers. But I personally, I'm in a writing group. We work with each other.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Or the other way around it is don't give them your entire book. You know, I write creative nonfiction, so I can't break it down to chapters and give chapters away that way.
Okay.
I mean, like you say, it is things have changed. I don't think Facebook is so trustworthy anymore.
Well, the bots have taken over. The bots are everywhere. Never mind.
And it's a very valid concern, you know, Jeannie pointing out. Somebody could go and self-publish your manuscript.
Is there a website that you all recommend to sell your books at, such as is Amazon good, or is there another website or other websites that you all recommend on, you know, getting started on where to advertise your book?
Amazon's very popular. Getting your book reviewed on Goodreads is also helpful.
Yeah, I would recommend Amazon for, like, if you're an indie author in your beginning, because your uploads are free. There are other distributors like Ingram Sparks, but then you have to pay per title. You have to pay every time you upload a new manuscript. So I think Amazon is really great that way. As for advertising, I think over time it's become diluted. So on all the platforms, never mind just Amazon, it's become very competitive, even if you have money to advertise. So it's quite difficult. But I think with what the two Dianas are doing about like face-to-face marketing, I think is really still the best, like getting the word of mouth across, right?
On that, is it good to, like, is it a requirement to have a social media presence? I mean, it's probably not required, but do you think it's a good idea? Or do you think, you know, it's okay, you don't always constantly update social media, but instead, you know, have face-to-face conversations like what we talked about?
Social media definitely helps, because I've done events where I was there as an author and somebody saw my post on Facebook and came to buy the book. So things like that definitely help. But I think having a website, you know, networking, being involved in your community, that helps as well.
Yes.
So
I think finding ways to be visible, to tell people about your book, that helps.
Jackie?
Like I actually, Twitter has actually helped me quite a bit to sell books, but I know that's really hit and miss for people. It kind of depends what you write and who your audience is, where you're going to find them. And if you just really don't like social media, or there's a particular platform like, I don't know, Facebook, that you just really don't like, I mean, if you really don't like it, just don't do it. Like, it's not, people are going to probably be able to tell that it's really not your thing. Twitter and Instagram are the main ones I use, I guess. Yeah.
Do you have a large following?
It's quick.
I don't have an enormous following, but it's big enough, and mostly all in the romance community, so that when I post stuff, I do get a lot of retweets and stuff like that. I mean, the problem is if you get too big on Twitter, basically you get way too many trolls and stuff like that. So it's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, I think at minimum you need a website. Like when people hear your name, they're going to type Google right?
Yeah,
And they're gonna see
yeah.
your
You
website.
want people to, if they hear of you, have a way to find out the latest information. So having, I mean, it can be a pretty basic website through WordPress or something like that. It doesn't have to be very fancy, but just having some basic information with links to your book and stuff like that.
But again, it depends on what your goal is. Like my friend wrote a book, he self-published it, and he hired a PR person, and the PR person did their job, and oh my gosh, he got the best interview, like CBC, the CTVs, the Globals, but then he couldn't do the interviews because he didn't want to talk. So you have to be careful what you wish for, right? Like, you know, you can hire people to help you do all this marketing, but what you have to perform too. So in the end, he decided he was fine, and he didn't want to market. So as long as he self-published it, that was his goal, and that's fine. So it depends on what you want with your books.
Yeah, thanks everyone for today. So we're going to be out of time in less than 1 minute. And I just want to say, if you have any questions, please email us. It's on the event invite in your email, or you can just comment on social media and we'll continue to talk to you guys. Otherwise, thanks so much for coming, and feel free to contact us, and we'll see you at the next LiterASIAN event. Take care now.
Sylvia, we have one late question that came in at 1:29. Can we answer that one?
If other people want to stay and hear the answer to that, what
just
would you
because
like?
they got in just before 1:30. What do you think about the competition which offers cash prizes, but we have to subscribe or pay a reading fee for the jury? Is it legit? Jeannie could maybe address this.
Yeah, I do enter contests that you pay for. It depends. You have to look closely at the organization, right? And their history. Like some of them are legit. Like I entered one and lost one called, I think it was called The First Chapter. So I think it was like $50 US. But if you win, you get a chance to be with an agent. They sell your book, et cetera, et cetera. And it's been around for like a decade. So fine, you know, I'll give them my money. But then there are a lot of other ones where are questionable. So just see how long, you know, the contest has been running, who's running it, and what do you get out of it. Sometimes they'll actually offer you a free review. So at the very least, you get some writing critique for paying the money. But it gets expensive after a while. Like, you know, every time you enter a contest, you know, $50, $20, whatever. And it adds up. So think about what you want to enter and if you think it's worth it, right? Because if you do win, then of course, you know, that's awesome. That's like winning the lottery. But keep in mind, a lot of people enter these contests too. So.
Okay, well, thanks again, everyone. If you have any more questions, feel free to message us on social media and our emails. Anyways, see you next time.